How many of you would be willing to live your life and do a few extra things if you could just have a bit of financial freedom? Anybody here that thinks, I wouldn't mind maybe taking an extra vacation because I would actually have the money to do it? Anybody that thinks that maybe, it'd be nice to go through life without a credit card debt, without a vehicle that needs to be paid off, or a mortgage that's due at the end of the month? Does that sound like something that you would be interested in, that kind of financial freedom? I think as a pastor, sometimes, probably more often than not, you're put in as a bit of a lightning rod. God wants you to share a message, and some of His truths, many of His truths, are very countercultural. And so they stand against the current that is coming in, and as pastors, we get to share that bit of information. We get to say, hey, the way the world's doing it is messed up. The way God wants you to do it is maybe a little bit different. And so you learn to kind of develop a bit of thicker skin so that you can be able to share some of those things, and you lean on God more than maybe the praise of man. But you see in the book, in the God's Word, in the books, the prophets, how these guys were called by God to deliver specific messages, and those messages oftentimes were challenging. And God's people, the Israelites, they didn't want to hear them, and oftentimes wanted to kill them. And so you just kind of get comfortable with that. And I realize as a pastor, sometimes hitting some of those tough topics is hard, but money is probably one of the tougher ones. And I think that probably one of the reasons for that is because as Americans, it becomes one of our primary gods. It really does. It becomes one of the major competitors, if not the major competitor, with God Himself. It's accumulating more and having more stuff, but I think all of us would like to be in a place, in a position where we could do more with the resources that God has given us than what we have. Well, I believe that one of the things that's going to help us in managing our money to find financial freedom is to be able to understand the right attitude. And sometimes an attitude means everything. The way that you approach something mentally changes the whole process. The way that you go to work mentally determines how your day is going to go a lot of times. The way that you handle your family, your kids, your marriage, and even your finances has a lot to do with the way that you think, which determines the way that you feel and the way that you act. And so we're going to talk about three things that I think are lies that we believe, we think that they're true, and three things that are truths that sometimes we think are a lie. And if we can get the right attitude, if we can get the right way of thinking, I think it's going to give us a great first step in determining financial freedom. Now, this whole series is based upon a book written by Pastor Barry Cameron, who's at a church in the Dallas, Texas area. And it's called The ABCs of Financial Freedom. You can look it up on Amazon. You can buy it in a number of different places. So if you want to cruise through and get that, the nuts and bolts are going to be there. I think that probably all of us have the ability within us to be content, but we don't exercise that ability very often. Think about it from the standpoint of a kid. How many of you have seen kids that they don't touch a toy? It could be for weeks, it could be for months, but then they have a friend over who wants that particular toy, and all of a sudden that is now their favorite toy and they can't live life without it. I think most of us are satisfied until we see somebody who's got something we don't have. And if your life is like mine, there's always somebody who has something that I don't have. And that's not to say that I'm going to go shoot that person and take what's theirs. I remember walking the streets of Chicago. I had just been given the gift of, back in the day, it was a Bulls starter coat. I don't know if any of you remember when starter coats that was the thing. And I was a country boy. I'm in a town of 1,000, and I thought for sure somebody was going to beat me up and take that starter coat. That's what was playing in my head. And we're not talking about that kind of mindset at all. We're really just talking about the wants and the desires, the eagerness. Matter of fact, as I was working on this message and I had a screen popped up on my computer, and it was this slide. I'm satisfied with what I have until, and I was talking to my wife. It's like, oh yeah, I've got this guitar. I picked it up used. It's great. It's a PV, but I think that I'm getting good enough. I could use a better guitar. That would be fun. Let's do that. And she looks over and sees this on my screen on the computer. Always satisfied with what you have until. Now, I want to tell you, as a pastor, we're not just going to get free on this particular issue. We struggle with coveting from other people too. We struggle with wanting what other people have. How many of you had a place to sleep last night that maybe wasn't on the ground? Anybody have, like a bed maybe that they slept on? How about a roof over your head? In America, we are rich. We have so many blessings that we are blind to. And most of us, if we get to sign on a house like this one, we're pretty happy. We're a homeowner. Like, we have our own place. Like, we don't have neighbors. We don't have to live in an apartment. We don't have to deal with somebody else's party and somebody else parking in our spot. Like, this is our place. We get to do with it what we want until it comes time to fix it, like fix the roof and fix the furnace. And those are all fun things of being a homeowner. Some of you are in an apartment complex and you love it. Fantastic. Glad you're there. And you're probably thinking, this is pretty awesome. Well, if we get into a home type of situation, many of us, we're pretty content, especially that first day. Like, oh, this is awesome. This is exciting. The thrill, the energy is there. Like, I remember whenever we first moved into our home here, like, we could split up boys, girls with bedrooms before all three of the kids, believe it or not, were in the same bedroom. It was a big one, but they were in the same bedroom, and now we could split them, and this is a win, and we have an extra bedroom for family when they come over. And at the top of our list, we had a second restroom. Yes, score. And this was awesome. But you know what? I want you to imagine that you just got this home and you're kind of getting settled in, and now you're kind of going through the motions. You're paying that monthly mortgage payment that's coming along with this wonderful home that you've got. And then Sally down the street, now I'm making Sally up, don't look for her, she's not here. Sally down the street gets a new home. And so she puts her house on the market, and this is where she moves. And you're like, oh, man, the house Sally's got is pretty awesome. I can't wait to get a home like that. Man, she has got a yard that's awesome. Maybe you don't want a yard. You're fine with the apartment living. That's cool. I like to be able to get outside and have fun, entertain, whatever. Mowing the lawn, different story. But maybe you're like, oh, the yard is amazing. Like, we can have some awesome football games there. Like, we can actually play catch. That's something I dream of for our house. It's like you throw the ball, you just like underhand it, you might as well, across the backyard, because there's just not enough space. Or if it goes too high, it goes over the fence into the neighbor's yard when you got to go all the way around to try to get to it. And so you begin to think things like that. You think maybe, oh, you know what? She has got not just one guest room, but she's got 2 guest rooms. And you know what? Her bedroom, like her master bedroom, has got a bathroom right there. And it's her own. I need one of those. It's got one of those rooms, where like in the bathroom, it's not just like a tub with a shower in it. Like, I can have a tub and a shower. Oh, that'd be awesome. The kitchen, granite countertops, stainless steel appliances, open concept. And so your mind gets to wander, doesn't it? You don't even have to know Sally. You just have to turn on HGTV. Oh, yeah. We should do that someday. Then you remember all the extra projects you've already started that haven't been finished yet. So what is it? How many of you have a phone with you? Anybody have a phone with them? So our phones are pretty awesome. They change a lot. Do you remember when the Razr was really common? And it's like, oh, I can't wait to get a Razr. Flip phone. It's got the cool little touch pad on it. Folds really small, fits in your pocket. That's awesome. And then the smartphones came out. Oh, you can touch the screen on that thing. Oh, you can watch movies on your smartphone. I need one of those. Do you remember this guy? Oh, that was the day, wasn't it? 88855. Oh! 888. You remember that? Am I the only one? It's like your finger slips. You got to start all over again. Oh, it was a pain. But some of you, like, the transition to the iPhone has been rough, and so I want you to know there's a new app out. You can get this. If this is you, if you have difficulty changing, but the concept here really is we're satisfied with what we've got until something better comes along. Until somebody's got something that we want. And so maybe it's a new house, maybe it's a new car, maybe it's a new job, maybe it's the newest phone. And I guarantee you, if you go out and buy a new phone today, there's going to be a new one next week. And you're just never going to be able to keep up. But we get sucked into these concepts, these ideas that we think, if I just get some more, if I just have that one more thing, it's going to make me happy. So let's take a look at some lies that I think people buy into. Number one is the church is only interested in my money. Guys, I want to tell you this is the furthest thing from the truth, and this is one of the hardest things for pastors to preach on. Because this myth is there and it's prevalent. And we want to tell you that we exist to be generous. Like, our hope as a church, as a body of believers, is to give stuff away and serve people as much as we can. One of our core values is love. And we want to love people. We want to love them enough that we're willing to help them financially or otherwise as much as we can. So the goal is not to accumulate, but to give. And the church gets that opportunity to distribute possessions based upon what comes in through the giving. And it's a great way to do that. It's a great way to also love people by helping them to grow in their relationship with God. And we also have a core value to serve people. You don't serve people because you're all about the money. Guys, that just doesn't happen. That's not why we're here. As a new church, we get to rethink things. And then you get to look around and go, man, this church is not about a building. Nope, it's not. It never has been, and I hope it never is. We hope to get in a localized location. We want to be there so that we can love and we can serve even better, but not so that we can have and we can buy and we can accumulate. That's not our goal. And so I want to tell you that is a myth. It's an untruth, and if you buy into that lie, I want to tell you that there are lots of places you can go. You can go to a restaurant today and have lunch today, and you can probably attempt to do a dine and ditch if you want, but more often than not, if you go in to have that service provided for you, they're expecting payment in return. If you take your car in to get the oil changed, to get something fixed on it, the mechanic's going to want something in exchange for the service he just provided. I want to tell you, you can come here each and every week, and we'll invite you in with open arms and never expect you to pay anything. You can come here if you have nothing. You can come here if we need to give you something to help you. It's never about the money. But when you come and you give, that helps us to be able to be generous to other people and to be able to accomplish our mission and our ministry as a church. But the church is definitely not about the money. The second myth is this. If I just have more money and more stuff, it's going to make me happy. We just talked about this one. If I could just have that one more thing, if I could just have that one more bedroom, if I could just have that one better job, if I could just get that one more dollar raise, then it's going to make me happy. And it's always somebody else's fault. It's amazing how we do this. It's always somebody else's fault. Like, if I just had a better job, if I just had a better boss, if I just had a better raise, Because I want to tell you, one of the things that's going to help you with this is, again, it's that attitude piece. Like, we have to own it. It's money that's coming in. It's given to us to use. And if we buy frivolous things with our money, then we deal with the consequences of buying some of those things. If we mess up our priorities and we think, oh, yeah, my mortgage is due at the end of the month and it costs me X number of dollars, but all the way up to that point in time, I spend my money the way that I want and the way that makes me happy, and I get to the mortgage payment without the right amount of cash, then I'm kind of going to be hosed. It's going to stink. And so I remember as a high school student, of course, a lot more expendable income that time, and I didn't know what money was for sure. Money was just something to be spent to make me happy. And so in the morning, I would swing by one of our two gas stations. I would grab a donut, maybe a chocolate milk. Back in the day, I don't know how I did this. I could get those little mini donuts. I could get a package of those things and a chocolate milk. Now that would kill me. I could do it back then. I could spend $2, $3, $4 in the morning. Do it again after school. After school, swing by, grab back in the day it was the Big Slam Mountain Dew and the Kit Kat Big Cat, big candy bar. And that was a routine for me. And sometimes I'd get something different, but that was one of the things I remember getting all the time. Now think about this, and maybe this is your life. And maybe it's not the Big Cat. Maybe for you it's the Starbucks. Maybe for you it's the whatever. I don't know. Fill in the blank. It can be a ton of different things. Okay? And so in that day, how much money are you spending on those little things? And it seems like nothing. It's like, it's just $1. Oh, it's just a couple bucks. But then that couple bucks, you do that, your spouse does that, your kids do that. At the end of the day, that couple bucks is $10. At the end of the week, that $10 is $70. At the end of the month, are you doing the math? And so you're going, oh, I'm a couple $100 short on the rent. Well, I can tell you where the couple $100 went. So it's owning that, really. And it's not an easy thing to do, and it's a really hard thing to teach. And man, I can tell you all about it because I lived that. That was the life of my family. That's how we grew up. That's how we thought, and that's how things worked out. But if we change our attitude and we begin to dismantle the lie that if I just have one more thing, if I just have that one more position, if I could just have that one more job, that one more dollar, that it's going to make me happy, and it just never does, because enough is never enough. Because as soon as we get it, something else comes out. Something bigger is there. Something new is on the market, and it's never going to satisfy. Ephesians chapter 5, verse 10. It's an Old Testament passage. The guy we're talking about here is Solomon. Solomon believed to be the richest guy ever. I would buy into that. Also the wisest. He asked God to give him wisdom, and he did, and yet he was one of the dumbest guys. I don't know. It's like he just misused that wisdom, but God kind of gave him a really, really long rope, and he hung himself really good. And Solomon had all of the wealth and all of the possessions, and he had tons of women. And he had so much stuff that it says that in that day, gold was common. Gold was, it was just another material. It's like, hey, I'm going to go use the restroom and sit on my gold toilet. Like, it was that common in the era of King Solomon. And so he knew what it was like to have. And like many movie stars today or famous athletes who would aspire to do something great, so many of them have gotten to the top and said, man, I was looking, I was hungry, I thought this would satisfy, and once I got there, I realized that was empty too. That was Solomon through Ecclesiastes. He's like, I have been given the opportunity to see and experience everything, and let me tell you about it. So chapter 5 of Ecclesiastes, about page 357 if you're following along in one of our Bibles, verse 10. Solomon says, he who loves money will never be satisfied with money. If you need to have a little cash in your bank to be happy, probably going to need a little more cash in your bank to be happy. And a little more cash in your bank to be happy. He who loves money is never going to have enough. Nor he who loves wealth with his income, this also is a vanity. Solomon is quoted as saying many times throughout the book of Ecclesiastes, this too is meaningless. It's worthless. It's a chasing after the wind. If you're trying to strain for financial gain, you're only going to find that leaves you empty and searching. The third myth is this. It's my money and I can do with it what I want. Never say that? I remember as a kid a lot of different times coming up in conversation with my parents. Well, whenever you're an adult and you get your own job and your own car and your own house, you can do what you want. But right now you're in my house, follow my rules, and you spend my money. So you're going to do what I want. That maybe it wasn't worded exactly that way, but the concept was much the same. And we get locked into this idea that, well, I go to work and I do this and I do that. And we fill it with lots of I's. And so then it's my money, my possessions, my things, my property. Don't touch my stuff. And we get very much locked into this self-centered, self-absorbed type of mindset. But what if we radically change that mindset and we begin to experience a new kind of truth that opened us up to different kind of wisdom? Matthew chapter 25. And this would be in about page 539 in our Bibles, if you're following along. This is the parable of the talents. Now, in the parable of the talents, you're going to see something unfold, that there is a manager and there is the owner. The owner leaves for a while and he blesses his workers, his servants, with some talents. That's a form of money. We could say that a talent was similar to like a bag of gold coins worth about $30,000. And so the first guy, he gives him 5 talents, 5 bags of money. And he says, take care of this for me while I'm gone. I'll come back. So the first guy, he invests that money. And the second guy is given 2 bags. And when the owner is gone, he invests that money. The third guy, he's given 1 talent. The 1 talent man, he's like, oh man, I'm scared of this guy. They use some farming terminology here in this passage in Matthew 25. He reaps where he doesn't sow. Sowing is the idea of throwing out seeds. Okay, he harvests where he didn't plant. And so we've got these agricultural analogies, but the idea is that this guy is he's going to be pretty ruthless. Like, he's going to be harsh on me. Like, he's going to expect more out of me than what I can give. So if I lose this, I'm hosed. So he went out back and he dug a hole and he stuck the bag of money in it and he covered it up. Now when the owner came back and he's trying to make things come to account, the first guy's like, okay, you gave me 5, here's 10, I invested it. Whoa, good return on the investment. And he blesses him. The second guy, you gave me 2, here's 4, he blessed it. And he did great things. Now let's pick up in verse 23. His master said to him, well done, good and faithful servant. This is the man with 2. You have been faithful over a little. I will set you over much. You've been faithful with a little, but I'm going to give you more. I think that's what God will do for us. He says, enter into the joy of your master. In other words, the master, the owner, is like, I got all this stuff. You manage that little piece, but all that I have is yours. Enter into the joy of your master. And he also said to the one who had received the 1 talent, he came forth and said, Master, I knew you to be a hard man, reaping where you did not sow and gathering where you did not scatter seed. So I was afraid, and I went and I hid your talent in the ground. Here's what was yours. But his master answered him, you wicked and slothful servant. You knew that I reap where I have not sown and gather where I scattered no seed. Then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers, and at my coming I should have received what was my own with interest. I know it doesn't quite equate the same today, but the concept is this. Instead of burying it in the back, you should have at least taken it to the local bank and earned 0.0007% interest on it, so that whenever I come, there's a little bit extra. Like, you didn't just set it there and leave it and let nothing happen to it. And sometimes we do this. God blesses us with stuff, and we don't begin to think this way. We think it's mine and I can do with it what I want, and so I can spend it how I want, invest it how I want, or sit on it how I want, but I don't have to do anything. And God's given us some tremendous things, and He's saying, oh, I expect you to do something with it. Don't just waste it. Don't just spend it away. Just use it for my benefit. Love on people. Serve on people. Share in it. Invest in your family. Invest in your marriage. Invest in your community. Do something with it for my good, for my benefit. And so I will take the talent from him and give it to him who has 10 talents. For to everyone who has will be given, more will be given, and he will have an abundance. But from him who has not, even what he has will be taken away. The concept is about to change tithes. These are the 3 lies. We believe that the church is all about money. We believe that more stuff will make us happy. And we believe that it's my money. I can do with it what I want. Do you realize that 65% of marriages are 65% of marriages say that they have a financial issue. Financial situations have been a situation for them. They've been a struggle. There are a number of different marriages that mark financial difficulties as being one of the major contributors to a divorce. And that's inside the church and outside the church. Money is kind of a big issue. So it would be great if we could experience some financial freedom. But I think what's even more impressive than that is the idea that we have so many kids going to school, to college. I mean, it's an expectation anymore that if you're going to get a job, not just a high school diploma, but a college degree. And so as we celebrate graduations this time of year and we give kids cards and we give them a nice little gift of maybe $20 or whatever we can afford to give, we do that, and then the kids graduate and then they get a piece of mail in the box that says, well, congratulations, you now owe, on average, $35,000. Woohoo! I graduated. Yay! This is awesome. And nobody tells us how to repay that. Think about this. Whatever that minimum payment comes in at, we get to that moment in time. We go, oh, hey, this is only X number of dollars a month. I remember getting mine and going, oh, I only owe $150 a month. This isn't so bad. I can do this. But nobody ever told me that if I just pay the minimum, I'm going to pay that for the rest of my life. But that I actually need to go above and beyond that. I think money is a very big deal. And if we can change our attitude towards it, and if we can understand these three things that oftentimes we think are lies, but are, matter of fact, they're truth, it's going to help us a long way. Number one is that we are not the owners. You think it's your money, you think it's your stuff, you think you can do with it what you want. I guarantee you that you would not have the job that you have, the family you have, the car that you have, the house that you have, the money in your pocket, if God didn't bless you with that. There wasn't anything that you did. Now, you may have achieved more because of your own human effort, but to realize that this is God's. It's God's stuff. It's God's possessions. I had a guy in one ministry. He was an over-the-road truck driver, owner, operator, and when he got a new truck, he said, "This is God's truck. It's not my truck." And so I bought it with God's money, and I'm going to use it to do God's work, and I'm going to do whatever God wants me to do with it, and I'm going to pray over it, and I'm going to ask God to bless it. What would happen if all of our lives were lived that way? When we got a car, it was God's car. We got a house, it's God's house. Our family, our marriages, those are God's. Those are a blessing from God. And if we have a right attitude, it's going to change the way that we view things. And we can go back to this parable in Matthew 28, the parable of the sower. God is the master, and we're the servants. God has entrusted us right now with what's already His. So you think maybe God is all about the money, that God expects too much when He asks for 10%? God's saying, no, I'm giving you 100%. I just want to know that you trust me. Can you give me 10% back? That's a tithe. That's what we call that. And so it really can kind of frazzle your brain if you don't understand this concept and you don't understand the right way of thinking that this is God's stuff, God's property, God's possession. And I am just a manager, and I need to do my best to invest it wisely because He's coming back one day, and He's going to ask me how I spent what He gave. I had somebody stop in my office, and we were talking about the idea of tithing, and it was really cool because they were wrestling through some of these details, and some of the details that they were wrestling with is like, okay, so each week I come and I give cash. Is that okay? Yeah, that's fine. I mean, it doesn't matter to me. Like, however much you have decided in your heart to give, that's what you should give. I don't need to come up with that. Okay? But I'll tell you that the Scripture says 10%. Is it still legit? Is it still something to be factored in? I'd say absolutely. It was mandatory in the Old Covenant before Jesus, and afterwards Jesus referred to it a couple different times as still giving your 10%. Why? Because that's a way of saying, I trust you, God. I want to honor you with what you've given me, and I want to believe that you're going to handle these things. But if you give cash, maybe you don't want anybody else to know what you gave, and that's cool. If you do want a tax break at the end of the year, we need to know that you gave. And so if you just take an envelope, and this is what I told him too, just take an envelope, give us a number or put your initials on it, let us know. In some way communicate to us that you've created this envelope system, and when that money comes in that envelope or with that marking, we know that that's you. And we can do this all based upon a number system. So if you have a favorite number and it's like 13, let us know that, and we'll tell you you're very unlucky, but that number is then yours, and we'll make sure that nobody else gets that, and we keep record of that, and at the end of the year, then you know, hey, this is how much I gave, and you get a tax credit for it, as opposed to writing a check. How about the idea, and I was asked, well, what if I'm gone? How does that work? Well, the best way I can think of this is, let's say you have a mortgage on your house, or you're paying a rent. Your rent is $600 a month. It's pretty low rent for Columbus. You're paying $600 a month, and you decide you're leaving to go on vacation for a couple weeks. So you tell your landlord, here, I'm only going to give you $300 because I'm going to be gone 2 weeks. Suppose that'll work? Probably not. Probably not. I would just say, hey, if you buy into the vision of what we're doing at Connection, if you want to be a part of the mission of what God's doing here, man, consider signing up for regular giving. I mean, I do it through my bank, and it goes out once a month. There's one check. It goes automatically. Some people have it set up that every week it does that. Some people use the online giving app. It's a great way to do that, and you can still give even when you're not here. Again, not a mandate, but something you can consider. And then the idea of 10%, and what does that actually mean? Like, do you give that before the taxes come out or after taxes? This is stuff, and guys, I haven't processed this for a long time because I've been doing it for quite a while. And I hope you understand that too. As a pastor, I still tithe. I don't not tithe. Your money doesn't go into my pocket. That's not the way that works. Okay, but as you give off the top. Do you give after government? No, you give to God first fruits, you give to him before the government. And this is crazy because you oftentimes don't even see what the government already took. You just see the lump sum at the end. But if you're wanting to really kind of adhere to the tithe, that's kind of what we go by. And it's a good way to figure that in and factor that out. If for you, giving a 5 each week is a big step of faith, man, give a 5. If for you, you've been given a 20 for 20 years, I would suggest maybe going back and analyzing how much maybe your income has increased over that time. Because the prices of things go up, and we need that. And it's amazing the opportunities we have to bless other people. A couple weeks back, I shared with you that the church, as far as the tithable income coming in, just wasn't even enough to really meet the basic expenses of where we hope to be at this point in time. But there are some things that we wanted to do in response to that. Number one, I felt God convicting me that I was operating more out of fear than out of faith in Him. And so I said, whatever comes in this particular Sunday, half of it's going right back out. We're going to give it away. We're going to serve other people. We're going to give it to them in some form, shape, or capacity. And so we've helped, among a lot of things, we've helped give people clothing to help start a new job because they didn't have the wardrobe to get into that new position. We've helped give money for groceries. We've given out goods and services to other people. And this is something that as a church we want to do. We want to be generous. We want to give. But we have to monitor what we give based upon what is there in the till to give. And so I want you to understand that we're not about receiving, but really about generosity. And we can carry that kind of on. So we are not the owners. We're just managers. I think going back to Matthew 25, I think we should understand that God has the power to shut us down. We can think it's ours, and then we can operate, we can do with it what we want, but God has the power to take it away at any moment's notice. And this is a really hard thing to understand. It's a really hard thing to grasp. But you can see with the man with the one talent, his talent taken away, given to somebody else. Does that mean God's going to? No, not necessarily. But I want you to understand that when it's God's stuff, His money, He can do with it what He wants when He wants. That's kind of the privilege of being the owner. And it's something we need to understand. I'm going to kick you over to Acts chapter 4. We are a New Testament church following along with the Acts of the Apostles, which comes after Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. There's Acts. It's the story of the early church getting started. And about page 593, Acts chapter 4, we see the early church gathering together. And this is something that I hope that we could strive to accomplish, but it's so completely and totally countercultural. Okay, get ready for this because it's big. And so all of the people, they came together, all who believed they had one heart and one soul. And no one said that what was theirs, what belonged to them was their own, but they had everything in common. So what they do, there wasn't a needy person among them, it says in verse 34. Those who had land and homes, they sold them, and the proceeds were sold and laid at the apostles' feet, and they distributed to those who had need. As I see this so often in the idea of being a good neighbor. And there are so many times that, we see a neighbor, they get a snowblower, right? And so, oh yeah, that's a good idea. My back kind of hurts. I think I'll get a snowblower. And so we go get one. When really we could just kind of share. Say, why don't you buy the snowblower, I'll buy the lawnmower, and we'll just kind of do a swap out. This will work pretty good. But we don't think like that. We think, oh, he got a 500 horse, I'm going to get a 600 horse. Because mine needs to be bigger and better. This is last year's model, I'll get this year's model. And so we get to thinking about how to one up or how to be there and at least be at the standard with everybody else instead of really sharing what we've got. What happens if we're a church that really lives this community lifestyle where we understand that what we have is not ours and what we have is actually a way to be a blessing? And if we have something, say a truck, we can loan it to somebody and say, hey, get the stuff that you need because I know what it's like to not have a truck. Okay, we can have equipment, we can have tools, we can have ourselves and our ability to serve, and we can serve other people, and we can work this together, and we have everything in common. Man, this is a radical idea, isn't it? I think that's why the early church stood out. I think people are like, whoa, this is different. Like these people are selling their stuff and giving it away to other people and helping them out. And there wasn't anybody who wanted, there was nobody who was poor among them because they helped each other out. Man, this would be awesome. Third thing here is we give to God, and that's the only way I think that we're going to get out of our financial debt, out of our issues. We acknowledge the one who's in charge of the money, of the one who wants us to use it wisely. Luke in chapter 6, verse 38. Luke 6:38, about page 560. It's talking about judging others, but within it is this idea of giving to other people. It says, "Judge not, or you will be judged." Kind of a give and take. "Condemn not, or you will be condemned." Give and take. "Forgive, and you will be forgiven." Give and take. "Give, and it will be given to you." So God is kind of watching, like, how generous are we? How much do we help other people? How much do we love other people? How much do we serve other people? Do we share in these burdens together? Because good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, will be poured out into your lap. For the measure that you use it will be measured back to you. Man, to think that God could do that. And it's not always a money thing. This is not a health and wealth gospel. This isn't a, hey guys, put $200 in and I guarantee you this week God's going to bless you with $400. That's not what I'm saying at all. Please don't interpret it that way. What I'm saying is that God has blessed you with so much, and He's going to continue to give to you. And in some ways, maybe financially, in some ways it's going to be material, in some ways it's going to be family blessings, in some ways it's going to be health. You can't outgive God. It's something I've learned throughout my ministries. You can't outgive God. When we were basically paying to do ministry, because it cost us more than what we were receiving from the church, I would have on a somewhat regular basis people shaking my hand at the end of the service and giving me the money that I needed to pay a bill or to pay my expenses to get back home to put gas in the car. And I've seen it time and time again. And I've seen it with so many people. When I try to be generous, the generosity comes back. Maybe in ways that I wasn't expecting it, maybe not all the time, and maybe I don't always see it. And sometimes it's not instantaneous, which we want that. We're in an instant fix kind of society. Sometimes it happens over time, and more often than not, it's going to happen when Jesus comes back. And all the blessings of heaven are going to be unleashed upon the people who are faithful in following God and being generous with what He's given. And that's amazing to understand that we have access to all the joys of the Master. But I want you to understand this concept, that God is a generous God. He's so generous that He gave His one and only Son, Jesus, to die for us. And that doesn't sound like a God that's just after our cash. Because there is no amount of money that any of us would surrender to give up such a sacrifice. It's only through love. And I want you to understand that when we serve such a loving and compassionate God who wants to reach out and care for us, we need to understand that we're expected to pass that blessing on. We're supposed to love others as He has loved us, to give as we have been given. And so we need to be generous. If no other people group in the world can say what we can say. We believe in God who gave up His most prized possession to love on us. We ought to be the most generous people in the world. Father, we thank You for the gift that You have given to us through Jesus Christ, and for all of the stuff that we have the opportunity to experience. Give us the right attitude. Help us to realize it's not about our car or our house or our job or our family. It's what You have blessed us with the opportunity to manage, and help us be good stewards of that. Give us a heart and an attitude of generosity to help and to serve and to love other people in our church family and in our community. God, I pray that You would help to break these bonds of financial dependence, of inadequacy and insecurity. Help us to be a family of believers that's not locked down to debt, but can freely give. And Father, we just pray above all things that we would be beacons of Your love to others, that Your attitude would be ours. And as we pause to celebrate this time of communion, Father, help us to remember to have the attitude of generosity. We pray all this in the name of Jesus Christ.